Have you ever wished that you could watch your favorite Counter-Strike talent and players brutalize each other in violent hand-to-hand combat? Well, that's never gonna happen, but I've got the next best thing. It's my pleasure to introduce HLTV's Fantasy Focus. Fantasy Focus is an HLTV fantasy companion where I'm going to take the biggest victories and the lowest lows of the season from the Celebrity Leaderboard and the regular leaderboard, mix it all together, sprinkle in some drama, interviews, trash talk, and some exclusive content, stir it up, repackage it, and ship it to you. I'm talking all things fantasy, all season long. If this is your first season of keeping an eye on the Celebrity Leaderboard, then let me give you a quick rundown of how last season unfolded. Congratulations to Lucy, who won her first season on the Celebrity Leaderboard by defeating Maniac at the last event of the season with a last-second controversial double heroic draft. And then apparently some guy named Vu? Yeah, Vu, he rounded out the podium in third. We had the world's #1 Sunpius fan, P2, hold on to his mid-season momentum for fourth. Yours truly, with a very respectable fifth finish, defeating my arch nemesis and Croatia's greatest, the #1 ranked HLTV representative, Prof. Good sixth. And then of course the Commonwealth locked down the bottom half of the top 10 between Hawka, Banks, and Sponge, and it was Striker who stole that last place, that 10th spot from Launders, but still forever living in Prof's shadow. Anybody outside of the top 10, well, we don't talk about them. Except for one person who deserves an extra bit of shame. That's right, North America's greatest streamer flopped harder than Team Liquid themselves. From #1 in the first ever celebrity season to 20th. Flom. What happened, bro? With a new season of fantasy comes fresh meat. Everybody give a warm welcome to the newest additions to the Celebrity Leaderboard. We've got the utility encyclopedia of Nart. We've got Denmark's Wonder Boy Bubsky, a Polish powerhouse in Taz, and Vince Hill, aka Metas, aka Big Papi. Of course, in with the fresh meat goes the dead weight. And no offense, but LMBT was a little too preoccupied coaching Monty to a top 8 finish in Paris, so he'll no longer be participating this season alongside Oni Pixel. That's right, the same man who brought you the $100,000 case opening didn't find time to play HLTV Fantasy, and for that reason, he's out the door. That's 4 fresh faces, 2 old gone, and a whole new season of fantasy set to begin with the Blast Fall groups. Alongside the standard leaderboard, we've got 2 other leaderboards we're gonna keep an eye on as the season goes down. We've got the Big Bucks Club. Now, thanks to 22Bet, there will be an additional $50 per fantasy event on the line for the Celebrity League. Whoever finishes highest in any given event will earn that $50, and with an average of 20 or more events throughout the season, that's an extra $1,000 on the line or more. So thank you 22Bet for making all of this possible. Additionally, we've got the 1%ers. Now this is for, if ever, a celebrity member is able to finish in a top 1% throughout the season, they'll go on this leaderboard. This is definitely the most prestigious leaderboard and one that I don't expect everyone to get to. Inevitably, as the season goes on, there's gonna be plenty of trash talk. And we're gonna stir the pot by highlighting it here alongside those big flops and any useful insight. But seeing as it's the start of the season and everybody wants a clean kickoff, let's focus on something actually useful. The queen of fantasy herself, at LucyCasts on YouTube, has gone ahead and posted a video called How to Win HLTV Fantasy. Lucy essentially unpacks her philosophies to fantasy, her strategies that she used last season in order to win this league, and finish top 1% in the world as well. She's gone ahead and set a personal challenge to finish top 10 worldwide this season. So best of luck, Lucy, but I hope you fail. Nart in the comments, though, has already started a bit of trash talk, albeit very light. Big talk from a small fish, a very unproven entity, says, "Congrats, but I'm here to take the trophy next season." I like the confidence, Nart, but be careful. If you swing at the queen, you best not miss. This season of Fantasy also features some pretty significant changes. If you haven't heard about them yet, I don't know where the hell you've been, but we've updated the roles and the boosters. By balancing out role selection, you're not always going to be shoehorned into taking the same roles every time, and some of the activation for the small bonuses has definitely been reduced. But at the same time, we've buffed booster activation. These are very important points that are always available, but it doesn't feel like everybody makes the most of them, so make sure you become familiar with those changes before the Blast group starts. Additionally, although not relevant right now for this next event, we've lowered the points for best of ones, cutting them in half. This will definitely be significant in, say, Swiss group formats when the majors return, but for now, this is an underlying change we won't really see the impact for as of yet. Additionally, the season points have been redistributed. It's going to be way less top heavy this season, and things are going to be rewarding the midfield much more. No longer do you need to finish in top 1, 3, or 5, but top 10, 20, 30, that's significant amounts of points. And that may reward playing safer, making sure you don't have any flops throughout the entire season. But without further ado, let's jump in to the first event of this fantasy season. The Blast Fall groups are set to begin. This is a format that rewards the #1 performing team from each of the 3 groups, and we've got tons of roster changes, tons of new teams, and an uncertainty as to who's going to perform well at this event. Now, this is a pretty comfortable event for the top dogs. There's 2 rounds of padding points available for whichever team tops their group in first place, and then the 3 other teams per groups will be mixed up into a single elimination bracket to fight for that second spot at the fall finals in Copenhagen, and the 3rd and 4th ranked teams will unfortunately be sent to the always dangerous Blast Fall Showdown. You do not want to attend the showdown because all of a sudden you're a single best of 3 away from getting eliminated and missing out on the Copenhagen Fall Finals, one of the sickest events of the year. In Group A, we've got Vitality, Ninjas in Pajamas, Complexity, and Evil Geniuses. Now this seems like one of the easiest groups of the entire event, and it seems like Vitality, who made a very good off-season roster change of introducing Flamesy over Dupree, should have a fairly simple road to lock in that #1 spot. Group B is Heroic, Na'Vi, Astralis, and Big. And in this group, I foresee Heroic taking that #1 spot. This is a team that didn't make changes alongside 3 teams who have made substantial changes, especially what would be considered their biggest competitor in Na'Vi, now having JL, Alexi B, and Ime. What to expect here, I don't quite know, beyond the fact that Heroic start strong. Yes, okay, at the beginning of the year, they were defeated by Evil Geniuses in an opening upset that would shake the Counter-Strike world for all about 48 hours. But I don't see that happening again. We're talking about a Heroic who's coming off of a win in Washington and looking to just roll forward with that momentum. So I'd say Heroic top Group B, and then in that second spot, Na'Vi or Astralis. Group C, now this one is competitive in my eyes, arguably the most competitive despite OG's presence. We've got FaZe, G2, and Liquid. Now there's a lot of people who are going to be writing off Liquid, but any team with Europeans in it should perform better than North Americans, no? That's what I've been told. FaZe and G2 should be locking horns for that top spot. These, much like Heroic, 2 teams who didn't make changes and arguably don't really have to. We know the potential that FaZe and G2 bring forth, and the question will be, can Liquid shake this up? I expect them to make this competitive with Patsy and Rainwaker. I'm hoping surprising us all. I think it's really important when we look at the Blast Fall Groups format to take an extra second and look at the single elimination bracket to see which teams have a chance to play versus the worst competition and maybe farm their way to that second place at Fall Finals. In that single elimination, we're going to mix up the groups, so no longer are you looking at whoever plays EG in Group A as maybe being heavier favorites. EG will not be eliminated if they bottom that group, and they could still be farmed elsewhere as time goes on. Complexity could fall into that group. OG could fall into that same situation. So again, make sure you fine-tune your fantasy draft to that single elimination matchup because it could end up being very important. But at the same time, that also, of course, takes into consideration the second place finish within the group. How can you predict all of these matches, all of these best of 3s? There's so much Counter-Strike to be played at the Blast Fall Groups. It's such a forgiving format. Now, beyond the format, we've also got the players. the core of the fantasy experience, the draft. Each episode, I'm gonna bring forth a few different categories, highlighting some things I think you should either tune into or try to your best to avoid. And this week, first and foremost, the big baller. The number one candidate for this category has to be ZywOo. A whopping $252,000 price tag seems ridiculous, but we're unarguably talking about the number one player of 2023. With a 1.31 rating across the year, ZywOo simply does not disappoint. The thought of him farming evil geniuses, plus ninjas or complexity, and then rolling those stats into 2 rounds of padding points, I mean, that's what fantasy dreams are made of. And with so many affordable options in this event specifically, there's multiple directions that you could take the rest of your draft. For once, we are no longer limited to 2 or 3 choices because the chosen one soaks up a quarter of your bank account. So if you're looking for a big baller, if you're looking to drop that cash, I say look no further than ZywOo. Up next, the safe bet. Of course, we all know that when playing fantasy, you want to choose players that are gonna go deep in the event, and that is why I say for the safe bet to take heroic, preferably a double heroic draft. A tried and true classic. It is specifically what won Lucy last season, and at an event like this, with the group they have, 3 new rosters versus heroic, I highly suggest that you have 2 heroic players in your draft. Now, I would say personally, Cadian and Shush, or Cadian in Tesses, because the kings of group stage are back, and they made those 0 changes. This is the sort of event where heroic should sit down, feast, and just walk out without even paying the bill. Okay, qualifying directly to the Copenhagen Fall Finals is something that heroic will be motivated to do more than anybody else in attendance. They've won in Washington, they ended the season hot, and they are the safest assumption that we can make in that their momentum will carry through the player break and over a group of brand new rosters. The beauty of heroic is they're usually all similarly priced. Right now, Stown and Jabby have had little bits of uptick, and those prices may force you downwards into the rest of heroic, but remember, the beauty of heroic is there is no weak link, and even their least expensive player in Shush has had some phenomenal performances in events comparable to blast groups in the past. So if you want a safe bet, something that's bound to take you into the top 50 at least, double heroic. Last but not least, we've got the eco pick. Now, this is a category of players that find themselves sub $190,000. Anybody who costs less than that can be considered for the eco pick. And because of all these new rosters with players coming in that haven't played recently, we've got some ridiculous price tags on individuals who may not be hard carries and who may not perform incredibly well, but definitely should be costing you more than what they're currently priced at. First and foremost, the unarguable elephant in the room is Hampus at $153,000. If we look at Hampus's group, his biggest competition is undeniably Vitality, but after that, it's Complexity and Evil Geniuses. I reminded you earlier to take a look at that single elimination bracket. If you assume Ninjas finish second, if you assume that Hampus isn't going to be the best performing player on Ninjas, well, make sure you're taking this gamble correctly. But Hampus at $153,000 opens up the door to get into the ZywOos, to get into all those big gold tickets. And there's no doubt in my mind that a month, 2 months from now, Hampus will be back into the 170s at least. Should be low 190s, generally where he is when he was regularly playing. The big uncertainty is just, he's been out of the game for as long as he has. Is it right to pick him now? Or should you look elsewhere for the eco pick? I would also suggest 2 other individuals. Now, these guys priced mid 180,000. I'm talking about Bit and I'm talking about Patsy. Now, Bit on Navi, I assume, will have the most difficult time transitioning into an English-speaking roster. There was recently a bootcamp vlog that came out from Navi where Simple was asked if he would be helping Bit with his English, to which Simple replied, "Only God can help him with his English." We know what happened when Vitality became this Danish-French mix where ZywOo fell off as much as he did for as long as he did, and if those same growing pains can be applied to Bit, then maybe Bit at 189 isn't the best idea. But I'm just saying, I know what Bit is capable of, and if we look back at his previous performances, who needs communication with aim like that? Alternatively, Patsy. Now, of the three teams between Ninjas, Navi, and Liquid, I expect maybe Liquid to be the most underwhelming, but depending on where they're placed in the single elim bracket, you could get a lot of value out of a player like Patsy. I expect his aggression is definitely going to be coming through, which means HLTV fantasy points, which means potential padding points. It's a bit of a gamble, but that's what the eco pick is. We know that Patsy was touted by the Counter-Strike pundits at the start of this year as potentially one of the stars of 2023, until unfortunately Spirit fell off the face of the earth. With that roster behind him and with this new project, I think Patsy is somebody that could end up exceeding expectations because he's flown under the radar now for months. But the eco pick's never where you're gonna make your money. It's where you're gonna save it so that you can buy the big ballers. Let's be real. Those are the three I say take a look at, and if not, you know the classic gambles: Apex, Kerrigan, or Hooksy. I thank you guys for tuning in to the very first HLTV Fantasy Focus. I'll be back every single event, and we'll be talking all that smack every time.